Lionel, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Bruce, are you ready? Bruce?
Yes, I am ready.
Were you on mute already?
No, not yet. Do you want me to go on mute?
No, that was good. I said,
Okay.
when I said, are you ready? You just were like kind of
Well,
like...
I did the thing for a moment, and then I decided I was.
Okay. So, can you tell me first off, before we go any farther, before we go one step farther, can you tell me if this is the first podcast since the last podcast?
According to my copious notes, yes.
Perfect. I'm excited tonight.
How excited are you? You like excited like a little kid before Christmas waiting for Santa?
No, I'm more excited like I got tickets to a big Leafs game.
Oh, and the seats at the center of the hockey universe.
Yeah, and like it's like the anticipation has been growing for a week.
All right.
So I'm very excited because
who you going to see?
It doesn't matter. It's whoever's in the playoffs. Whoever the Leafs are going to
lose to in the playoffs.
Yeah. As we pessimistic fans that we are. But
yes,
we're really. I saw something the other day on TV that the Leafs are of all professional sports teams, the Leafs have the fourth longest losing record. Cleveland Indians were in there.
Chicago Cubs.
And no, Cubs won.
Yeah, but until they won, they had a pretty good losing streak.
Yeah, but I'm talking currently.
Oh, current. Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, Cleveland Indians are in there, and there's a basketball team in there,
right?
And one other team. So, anyways, that's how pathetic the Leafs are. Tonight we're going to talk to Lance Mindheim.
Yes. Okay.
Have you ever heard of him?
I have heard of him. I think I have 6 or 7 of his books. Do
you really?
I do.
Wow. Do you have them handy? Do you know what titles you have?
I've got his. He's got a 3-parter on shelf layouts, and there's a couple others on the layout design I have. So I know where they are. I can run upstairs and grab them. But he's got how to design, how to build, how to operate a shelf layout. He's got the art of model railroading, which is I think it's the art of model railroading, something like that. A great book where he gets into photography and building layout for photography, and a couple of his track planning books out that anybody listening will get you his website somewhere through this and go there and get his books.
LanceMindheim.com. I wonder if I'm pronouncing Mindheim right.
You are one of the few that actually does, Lionel.
Oh, he's here.
He's here. He just wandered in.
He just wandered into the studio. Look at that. He wandered right in, and now he just grabbed yourself a seat there, Lance. How do people butcher your name? Like Mindheim seems actually kind of easy.
This is a family show, Lionel.
Okay. But am I pronouncing it right? Is it Lance?
That is correct. Yeah.
That is a cool name. Do you know how your parents decided to name you Lance?
Huh? I think back in the day, they still may do this. You could go to the store and you buy these baby name books, and they just had you just scroll through it, and I think they got a drunk on, taped the page to the wall, and threw a dart, and it came on Lance.
Lance is a cool name. Lance is like one of the. It's like an old, a 50s cowboy western hero name.
Lance, and the way you look at it, great catcher for the Tigers.
It's all fate, Lionel. If that dart had gone an inch one way or the other, I could have been Lionel, just like you.
Yeah, there you go. Were they only throwing at L's?
I think so.
They had decided that the name's going to start with L, and that's it. I was like 35 before I met another Lionel in person. I thought I was like the only guy on the planet. It was a very popular name in Britain. I was named after my British grandfather. And also Tom and William, come on in to the studio. Come on in and sit down.
Go ahead, Tom.
Good evening. Good evening. Where do you want to sit, William?
Well, I'll sit next to Lance. You sit on the other side.
Oh,
Okay.
you guys are going to sit side by side with Lance. How cool.
Well, it's like a sandwich.
Yeah, a Lancewidge.
Oh, there you go. They're just making sure he doesn't run out partway through.
Yeah. So, Lance, what we do here is we put blindfolds on each other so we can't see each other. So, do you know how to turn your camera off on your software there?
I see an icon that says cam. Do I just hit turn cam off?
Yep, just click on that.
There we go.
That's a mighty nice headset you got there, Lance.
Thanks.
You sound great. Before we go on, though, Tom, can you and I finish a little bit of business?
Sure.
Well, we met for the first time at Don Iris's house.
Well, actually, we did meet before then, if you remember, at the Scale Trains event.
That's right.
But yes, we did meet at Don's house the other day, and it was a great time. Don has a fantastic layout, and I actually operated on it, and maybe we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, we should actually. We should cover that subject. That's the average Don. He always wanted to be a head of a powerful mafia family, but he just never had any motivation. So he ended up as an average Don, and he runs a string of crooked laundromats in New Jersey. And what happens is you put the money in and you start washing your clothes, but the thing stops before the rinse cycle. So you have to put more money in to get your clothes out of the washing machine. And that's the best. That's why he's the average Don. It's a long story. Trust me. I know you listen to all the podcasts, so you'll catch up as you're going along. So, what did you think? Oh, yeah, we actually did meet once before, but I didn't remember you just being so tall for some reason or other.
Well, I think because we were sitting at a table there underneath the tent at the Scale Trains event. But,
okay.
Yeah, I'm about 6'2".
Okay, I must be I think I'm shrinking.
Yeah.
How tall are you, Bill?
I'm 6 foot even.
Oh man, how tall are you, Bruce?
About 6'2" and change.
Lance?
6'2" and shrinking.
Oh my goodness gracious! So I'm like basically.
You're like a dwarf.
I'm like the dwarf.
You're like a hobbit. You're like a hobbit.
Yeah, I'm just like I'm like the dwarf of the group. You guys can stand around me and be very intimidating.
And look down on you. That's not appropriate.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't blame you. So, and then I met John Farrington at Don's place.
Yes. And I've told you need to talk to him. Hopefully you'll get an interview with him sometime soon. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I took him outside and I thrashed him about, and then we did like a 15-minute interview. And then I was gushing all over him because he's a corporate pilot.
Yes, he is.
And I told him I was going to be a fanboy because of his cool job. I think
he does have a cool job, and I understand he listens to you when he can at a high altitude. Let's say he's over 30,000 feet because he flies those corporate jets super high.
Yeah, that one I think can reach. The one he flies is I think it's a Bombardier. I don't know what it is, but it's I think he said 43,000 feet that plane can get to.
Yes.
So
wow.
He's up there.
Yes, he is.
So okay. So give me your. So it was your first visit to Don's layout. Give me your brief. Like Lance, you've got to make a point. You can't be that far from Sebastian, are you?
Where is he?
He's in Sebastian, Florida.
I live in Maryland. I model Florida, but
that's right. I knew that. All right, but you're still not. You're a lot closer than I am when I'm in Canada.
That's true.
That's right. You do.
Well, maybe the next time we go to the Cocoa Beach RPM, we'll have to set up something. Maybe Lance can come down early and we can work out an op session at Don's. So we'll have to see if he can accommodate us. But,
yeah, because
you were asking what I thought of his layout. It's amazing. For those that don't know, he has a detached shed, and his layout is in there. The Providence, and of course I don't say it right. It's how do you say it, Lance?
Providence and Worcester.
Worcester.
Yes,
Worcester.
not spelled that is the way you would pronounce it, but yes.
Yeah, the R is silent.
Yes, but really nice. Actually, he follows a lot of Lance's, we'll say, tenets about open space, negative space. He's got, it's not crowded. The layout is even though it's double deck and has a helix and it's in a 12 by 20, 25 foot building, he's left some open space on the layout, and also the aisles are adequate. He's got a couple of yards and a nice little switching area, which is a paper mill, which is one of the jobs that I worked. And then he's got some other industries. His operations plan was fantastic. It wasn't, contrived or anything. You felt like you were actually doing the work that's there on the prototype. So I was very impressed. Had a great time. The time just flew by. Don made a comment about I wasn't saying anything, which was a good thing because that meant I was just completely engrossed in the operating session, which I was. It was great.
I was talking to him afterwards, and after you left, and I asked him, what did you think of that Tom guy? But after that conversation, I was talking to him, and I said, I was trying to describe it on the air on the podcast as I was interviewing him, and I thought to myself, this is like what this. I said to him, your layout should be a representation of what model railroading is, because it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't a 12 by 20 shed, but he had tons of aisle space. I thought I'd go in there and it'd be a little. It was perfect. He had a workbench. He had tons of aisle space. He had a helix. It was double decked. It was great.
Yeah. Well, one of the nice things is you only pass through the scene one time, which Lance talks a lot about that in his books and stuff. It's I don't remember the exact term that you use there, Lance, but it's very prototypical, so that you don't see other trains as you're operating. You just see the one scene that you're working. So it looks very prototypical. I know that it's proto freelanced, but it looks very prototypical. I mean, unless you're a big fan of that railroad, you wouldn't know that he's taken some liberties with some of the industries that he models or whatever. But it was very easy to understand. I mean, you come in and he points out where things are, and it doesn't take a lot of explaining to operate his layout, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's just amazing layout. You got next year, Lance. If you go to Cocoa Beach, we got to get you over there.
Yeah, I plan on being there. That would be fun.
Yeah, you'd be blown away by this layout. It is just like, and Bill, if you ever get to Florida, you got to make a point. I'll hook you up because Don is one of these guys. It's like, come on over, operate the layout. It's lots of fun.
Well, I'll be in Florida on Saturday, so Saturday to Wednesday. If there's a window in there that between golf and enjoying the weather, maybe we'll have to touch base.
Yeah, you should. Well, if you want to, just let me know, and I'll get you squared away with him.
Well, if I've got a calendar that works out, is he retired?
He's very retired.
Well, that makes it a lot easier. It opens the calendar up a little bit more.
Yeah. So where are you going to be? Where are you going to be in Florida?
Just outside of Tampa.
Okay.
Bradenton. I don't know how far away that. Far away that is from anything else.
It's the other side of the state, but it's like a couple-hour drive, I'd say.
Okay. Well, it's like Tom. You're a couple hours away from everything.
That's correct. 2 hours from everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. So how come you're going to Florida for only 4 days?
Well, I've got in-laws that have a place down there, and they've invited us down in the past to go golfing. So her dad's a big golfer. I do like golfing, so the opportunity to go play and not be in the winter weather, I'll take it.
Yeah, I should hook up with your father-in-law because I like golfing myself.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not as far for me. All right, let's get down to brass tacks, Bruce.
Okay.
The reason we have this podcast is because the Tom and Lance are friends, and Bill and Tom are friends.
Yes.
Tom is friends with everybody.
Yeah, Tom is friends with everybody. He's one of those guys that you kind of like, I'm busy, Tom, right now, and I can't talk to you right now.
Yeah.
And Bill, how do you fit into this equation? I forget.
Well, it is through Tom and the book that he had put together for how to build the right size railroad. He really encouraged me to develop and create basically the railroad that I have. And one thing that has kind of led to another was Lance's influence on his CSX modeling. I would see that and was just blown away. I'm a photographer by trade, so seeing that type of modeling, it took me to basically push my railroad that direction. And because of the stuff Lance has done, and then indirectly through the stuff Tom was doing, my connection is obviously through Tom in the YouTube world. But it's just such a small world to then basically kind of 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon and get yourself to Lance Mindheim. It, to me, is an honor to have the opportunity to have a conversation with him. But at the same time, the influence that he's had on the entire railroad community and Tom himself. I mean, I think the whole idea of shelf modeling or more switching layouts has been revolutionized by guys like Lance and Tom himself.
Absolutely. So you've never actually talked to Lance? This is your first time?
Yeah, it's the first time talking to him. I'm well aware of him. I'm sure he's probably not familiar with myself, but
Right.
I do know who Lance is.
So the common denominator here is Tom.
That's correct.
Okay. But the one thing I want to say to you, William, before we go forward is just don't embarrass me in front of Lance, okay?
I'll try now.
So Tom and Lance, let's tell this story. And you're right, Lance, you have had such a huge impact on the hobby over the years. One of my favorite questions for people like you that have had a influence on so many modelers is, do you have any sense of that? Is that something that you start, like, when did you ever get a sense of it? And if so, when did you start to get a sense of it?
I guess I have a sense of it, but I'm more internally motivated. It doesn't really, it's not really something that's on my mind that often,
right,
to be honest with you.
All right, but when you're writing books, do you get the feeling of, like doing the podcast, I realize there's lots and lots of people listening, so you want to make it as interesting as possible. So you want to make it as interesting as possible. Well, why are you here, Lionel? Well, I'm not sure. But when you're writing these books and these articles, you must write them with the thought of, okay, you must have a sense that people are learning from you. Do you write them as in a mindset of kind of being a teacher / leader in this particular field, or do you write them with that's something you want to write? So it's, if somebody wants to buy it, that's a bonus, or like, what's your,
I would say the motivation is 100% teaching. I mean, it's been, it's a wonderful hobby and I've gotten so much out of it throughout my life. And, I would just like to see other people get the same degree of enjoyment that I do. And, it's a complicated hobby. I mean, there's so many aspects between the scenery, the track, the electrical, and I see people struggling. So it really is, just to try to get people on board and help them get launched.
That's a good point. It can be a very complicated hobby depending on how deep you want to get into it. So Tom, how did you guys meet? Tell us that story.
Well, I was happened to be searching for a picture of CSX locomotives because at the time I was modeling a freelanced version of CSX in North Carolina for my layout back in Miami. And it was the CSX Hawks Ridge. And I've happened to come across a picture of a CSX locomotive that Lance took on his East Rail layout, which was his previous layout to the downtown spur. And I saw that and I was like, wow, that looks fantastic. I mean, it looks so realistic. And I found his email address or found his website, and I just contacted him, and I started, talking to him about, his modeling and getting some information from him basically. And it came about that he mentioned to me that he was going to start modeling a branch line in Miami. And I was like, well, I live in Miami. What do you need? I can take pictures for you. I can do some research. It's one of those things that I had seen this branch line in my territory when I worked for the City of Miami Fire Department. I crossed over this thing a bunch of times during the day, never really thought anything of it, of modeling it. And then once Lance started talking to me about, I want to start modeling this. And it's like, well, I know where that is. Here, I can go get some pictures for you. And I started rail fanning it and started seeing the crews operating. I was like, wow, this is a fantastic, short line, which does some, a branch line, if you will, that does some switching. And during that time, my interest started to lean more towards switching and operations. I started off like most people do with a 4x8, running the trains around in circles and doing some switching. And then I got rid of that layout and started going to a point-to-point layout, and then kept expanding it. And then Lance was just very inspirational and motivating towards my goals. I would, ask opinions about things, and he would give me honest feedback, which is what I really needed. I didn't want somebody to just say, "Oh, that looks fine, Tom. That's good." Now he would challenge me, along with the club that I was with. Some of the guys were a little more, we'll say, honest than others, which I take as a good thing, because I'd rather have someone tell me honestly that, no, you could do a little bit better there, and that would motivate me to, let me try this again. Let me see if I can do this a little bit better. And it wasn't maybe as good on the second as maybe the third and fourth. And I kept trying to improve my skills. And Lance was a big part of that. And then I just started following and reading his books. And it was like, we're we're on the same wavelength. We like the same things. We're interested in very similar things in the hobby. So that's kind of how our friendship developed. And then he came down to Miami and we did some rail fanning. And then he took me up to Cocoa Beach to the RPM. And I was like, well, I won't fit in there. I mean, these are premier modelers. I'm nobody. I'm lower than Don was, just we'll say the average modeler. I was below average modeler. But Lance introduced me to some of the guys in the hobby, the Andy Sperandios and Tony Custers and all these other guys. I was like, I'm in the Hall of Fame of model railroaders here, and I didn't think I belonged, but I went to the clinics, I started learning, and then pretty much Lance and I have become friends, and we talk about anything and everything from home improvement projects to whatever. It's not just model railroading, and that's one of the things that I really like about the hobby is the friendships that you make, like my friendship with William and a bunch of other people. Like we had talked about, John Farrington was another example. I just met John through his website, through his YouTube videos, and then we started talking, and then just kept corresponding and become great friends. And then he led me to Don, and then Don and it's kind of neat how all these things just keep connecting, and you're meeting so many great people.
Yeah, and then of course it's so easy now to contact people. I was interviewing somebody not that long ago, Bruce. We were interviewing somebody. I think you probably were there. You seem to always be hanging around the studio.
I got no other place to go,
But we were interviewing somebody, and Lance's name came up in conversation, and
we were talking with Dave Abelese and Otto.
Is that what it was?
One night about switching and slowing things down, and Lance's name came up.
Yeah, but there was somebody else we were talking to, and they had said something to the same effect as Tom did, about where they just reached out and sent him an email, and they were thrilled that Lance answered them back. So, I mean, Lance is just like you don't hold like you're somebody that's had a huge effect on the hobby, but obviously you don't hold yourself in some sort of, like, you want to help. Like, that's the feeling I'm getting from you, is you want to help. You want people to become better modelers.
Yeah, and that is true. And I also, I have a love for the hobby, and it's gone through tremendous change, and I'd like to do whatever I can to just. I don't think it's in the dire straits that some people say, that Chicken Little's, but I want to support the hobby and get people on board so that it can continue.
I don't think the hobby's in any kind of dire straits at all. I think the hobby is younger than people think.
I do too. Yeah.
That's my saying. I said to John Sacerdoti, it's model railroading. It's younger than you think. He loved that, and I think it is, because I think there's tons of guys. William, how old are you?
41.
There's tons of guys in their 40s and younger that are into this hobby way more than we even realize.
But I think part of that evolution that started to happen, it does kind of come from your thought process, Lance, in the small switching layouts, in the shelf layouts, how to build a small layout. Your books really do drive a point home, in that you don't have to have this monstrosity in your home to be able to create something that's enjoyable. And I think one of your books that was really good is The Model Railroading as Art. I, as a photographer, would see stuff and think, man, you could make a model look that good. And it's not a complicated element, but it's something that you brought to the table that makes our scenes come to life. And I got to ask you, do you have a background? Is there something that drew you into doing a book like Model Railroading as Art?
That's a good question. I think you asked that last time, Lionel. I didn't have an answer, and then I've been pondering it.
Well, before we go on,
I think I just woke up one day from a nap, and it occurred to me, probably.
But you've written a lot of books. Like you can't just wake up from one day and go, geez, I ought to do a book called Model Railroading as Art, because not only...
Yes, you can.
Oh, okay. But don't you have to at least realize that your ability to photograph and create models is adequate enough to create a book like that? Where did you get your experience? There's a better question. I
want to answer the first one. It was a good one.
Okay.
Because you don't always have the necessary skills, and so then you can go out and get them. And the Model Railroading as Art was a perfect example in that I was about a third of the way through it, and it's like I just don't know enough to to address this. And so I took about a year off and enrolled in this program at the Smithsonian Associates downtown, which was one of the best experiences of my life, and got the information. As far as photography, some of the people I talked to were less than honest and said, "Oh, that looks great." And I woke up one day and said, "Boy, these really suck." And and so I went out and just contacted a guy that was an excellent photographer, and he walked me through it. So to answer your question, you don't have to have the information. You have to know where you're weak, and then go out and find the people that will help you become stronger in those areas.
And
Yeah.
that's where I think your books come into play, because that's, for me, I look at it, and I'm a photographer, so I understand a lot of the techniques and concepts, but you bring a light and a background and how you pull it all together to basically draw it all and not make it look like a toy. And I mean, your photography kind of across the board as time has gone on, it's very clear it's improved and gotten that much better. And that's where I think that a lot of guys are trying to strive to get there. But your point that you just made is that you went out and got those skills. And I think a lot of guys are hesitant to do that. And that might even still be with some of the switching, books that you've put out is covering some of that type of stuff to get those guys past that hump that think they have to fill their basement. And when in reality, you can just build a switching layout that is more fun than having huge yards and too much stuff to try to maintain.
I think the subject of layout size is fascinating to me, because there is no right or wrong. And I think where we got into trouble is the people that had larger layouts were the best writers and the most prolific writers.
Sure.
And they never, if you go back through history, none of these guys said you have to have a layout this size. They just said, this is what I'm doing. And if you go back, and I think the most influential modeler of all time, nobody will ever touch him, is Tony Custer. I mean, not only is he an excellent modeler, but he's the best communicator the hobby has ever seen. And Tony never said that you had to have these huge layouts the size of what he's got. What he said was, I enjoy this particular aspect of the hobby, and because that's important to me, I need this size to support it. So it's a big distinction between saying the value of a layout is tied to its size. He never said that.
No.
He said, I enjoy timetable and train order operations, so I need spacing between my towns. And what he did say that, and along with Ellison, was modeling a transportation system and getting away from toys and really trying to take a look at what the industry is about and copying it. So, we're talking about layout size. There's no good, bad, or indifferent. I think you just have to be really aware of what your interests are and your resources, and then pick the size.
What we really need.
It sounds like some guy could write a book on building the right size layout.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What we really need is a book called The Right Size, Building the Right Size Layout.
Yeah, I just had a comment. It seemed like for years, the two major model railroad publications seem to always be pushing the large layouts, and I think that's as Lance alluded to, is that's all they could get. Nobody was building small layouts or were able to get small layouts across. And whereas you got the mindset in North America, I've got the basement, let's put a big layout in it. Then you look across the pond in England, where I've got a room, I can put a small layout on it. And you look at the way their layouts have developed over there, is just small, really small layouts compared to what we have here versus the big ones. And then, it's gradually, only the last maybe 10 years or so, I'm going to say that the smaller layouts seem to become more popular in the North American market. And we've got three guys here who died, and they read, breathe, sleep, drink shelf and switching layouts. What is it in the shelf type layout and the switching layout that you would recommend, and why, to somebody who's just getting started out?
Well, for one, it's attainable. And, for people like us, what most people don't realize is how many thousand mistakes we've made. And I think I probably made twice as many as anybody else, and I continue to make them. But you need to walk before you can run. And I would say that even if you had 1,000 square foot basement, if this is your first project, I think you're a little bit better off, getting some skills under your belt, getting some success, building some confidence, and you can always just take it apart and then build the larger one. But so one advantage is you get the quicker launch. They're simpler. You can build the skills. So that's one. And then the other is when you look at railroads, there's two ways you can model them. You can model the journey, which is going from town A to B to C to D, and model the experience of getting there without having a cornfield meet in the middle, which is what Tony likes. Or you can model what happens at the destination, which is what Tom and I do. The problem you run into is railroads are massive and they have unlimited space. That does not lend itself very well to modeling because you're always stuck with the proverbial situation where the locomotive is in one town and the caboose is in the one before. So from a realism standpoint, often we just don't have the space. Whereas with a switching layout where you're just modeling maybe just one industrial park or a corner of a town, it's a little more realistic to look at.
That's what's a word, Bruce? And anybody can jump in here. What's a word? I want to sound really smart here. What's a word for when somebody says something that's really not prolific? Because prolific is you say a lot of good stuff.
Profound.
Profound. Thank you, Bill. Lance, that statement you made about Tony never said about you had to build a big layout. That whole statement was extremely profound. You're right. I don't think I've ever even thought of that until you just said it. It's you're right. Like there was never a push on people to build big layouts. It just kind of naturally happened because of what you say. This is what these guys wanted to model. They wanted to, like Alan McClellan, he wanted to model, Virginia and all that. And it's like it just kind of happened. Nobody ever actually said if you don't build a big layout, you're not doing it right.
And you know what would have been interesting, because Tony is such an amazing communicator, is you just really wonder where the hobby would be if his interest was in switching layouts.
Yeah.
I think it would have totally gone in a different direction, because his ability to communicate ideas really does drive the direction of the hobby. It would have been interesting where it would have gone if he had a different interest.
And I think
he has dabbled in that in a couple of project layouts for Model Railroader. He had the G-scale one, and it's recently the P48 one.
Yeah, and I mean, I built a small project layout for Model Railroader and changed my outlook on the hobby. But Tom and William.
Yes.
Is it not our duty to try to make sure that everybody is as aware of Lance as possible? Because Lance, you are just an absolute fountain of information, and approachable. Like everybody I talked to that's ever had any contact with you is like, oh yeah, I talked to Lance and he was like helping me and all this stuff. Like, don't we have to figure out a way to make because Lance, I think you have a ton of information to add to the hobby. I know you've put out a lot of information already, but I don't know. I just feel like this is a new world. Would we not say that the fact that switching layouts are becoming acceptable is a new world? Would that be maybe a way to go?
I would say that they are becoming aware of their practicality. Are people beginning to see the light of? They're starting to have the self-awareness of the resources they have in terms of time and space. And I think making the connection of, this is a hobby of participation, and my chances of participating are much higher if I can get something together with just 5 or 6 hours a week, as opposed to something that's going to be a full-time job.
Right.
So exactly. They're more attainable.
Yeah, that's the first thing, Tom. That was like the thing that I thought of when I saw Don's layout. I was like, this is exactly what people need to know that model railroading can be.
Yes, it's achievable or attainable, which is a good thing. And a lot of people, when you look at these large layouts, look at them and go, oh, there's no way I could ever build that. One, I don't have the time or the money or maybe the skills to do it. But a smaller layout, I've had people come in here and look at my layout, and it's like, this is an achievable layout, and they say it like, I'm insulting you, and it's not. I think that's great. I'm glad that my layout has inspired some people to build their own layout or to venture out and try a layout that they weren't even going to think about until they saw how much was possible in my little 9x10 room.
Well, that's just it, Tom, is a lot of times you're looking at it and people don't realize your railroad gives you an illusion that it is huge. And people, when they see your railroad, I think you've said in the past that people feel like, this is it? This is where it's at? And I think to your point, Lance, and even just your books and your information in general, those backdrops, the realism that you start to put into it, you make what would be a smaller layout or a switching railroad seem or appear much larger than it is. And people have this feeling that it needs to be this grandiose thing, but almost a believable scene. And, I guess Tony, he could be, I don't think he's necessarily, maybe the godfather of large layouts. He's got a beautiful railroad. And as you said, he never said that large railroads were the thing you had to build. But Lance, in a lot of ways, I would say that a lot of the stuff that you're putting out there and the information you're pushing out is making that switching world what people think of as small, but it's making it big. And I think a lot of guys that I know have mentioned your name. And I think in large part that's because you've kind of opened a door and put information out there that has said, you can make something bigger out of something that is smaller. And Tom, I think your railroad is a good example of that, where you look at it and you think, well, this isn't that big. But Lance, I've got to ask you the question then is, what made you decide Miami in terms of a switching area to choose? The entire country, and you went with that little area. What brought the interest there?
That's actually pretty easy. I think that, we talk about the model railroading as art, and I've always been fascinated with film and just the moods that it conveys, particularly indie films. And, getting to your point, I go back in time. I love Miami Vice and the mood that conveyed.
Sure.
I love some of the LA crime shows and the New York crime shows. So, I mean, not the ones that were schlocky, but the ones that were really had amazing cinematography and really good storylines. And so it was really just that whole Miami vibe and that whole Miami mood, which drew me to it. But I had to get a lot of help because I knew I wanted to model Florida, and I spent probably about a year looking at different themes, and I was getting nowhere. And I was giving a presentation at Cocoa Beach. This was before I met Tom, and I gave the presentation. And then I said, before we wrap it up, I just want to get some input. I'm getting nowhere finding this theme. And this guy who Tom knows, I think, David Orr, and Bill McCoy came up and said, yeah, what you're looking for does exist. We used to work for CSX in Miami. And they sat down with a pad of paper. They laid it all out for me. And then David, who's the nicest guy you would ever meet, says, watch your mailbox. And a week later, there was an inch-thick envelope of maps and drawings, and he just explained everything to me.
Oh, that's cool.
I credit David and Bill McCoy for really solidifying it. And then, I got a lot of support from Tom. And then Tom knows Tolga Urbora, who's an excellent photographer. So once I got up and running, I had a lot of support in terms of information.
And that'd be your downtown spur layout, would it?
I started with a smaller one called East Rail, which was a smaller park, maybe 2 miles, Tom, from downtown spur, mile and a half, 2 miles.
Yeah, a couple of miles north and west of the downtown spur.
And going back to when I was 16, there was a old magazine called Railroad Modeler. It's long since defunct. And they had an article on the Los Angeles Junction, which I just wore those pages bare, reading that over and over. And somewhere on cable, they had a great show called True Detective, and it was filmed in Vernon, trackside of the Los Angeles Junction. So that was really the impetus to get that one built. That's a very long, meandering way of saying that high quality film and movie making and videography has been a big influence.
So you mentioned Miami Vice and influence. What, even from a movie standpoint, what do you consider one of your most influential movies that has kind of left an impression on you?
As far as modeling goes, I would
Yeah.
say not so much movies. I would say in terms of, I would go back to Miami Vice in terms of
Okay.
the series having the biggest
Sure.
influence.
So I'm confused a little bit, not unusual. So what was it about Miami Vice that made you, like, how did you make the connection from Miami Vice to model railroading? I think you kind of already answered the question, but like I'm fascinated. Like, I think you just said a mouthful there about high quality filmmaking and videography.
But I think it's just that the whole atmosphere of Miami, the scenery, it's just like a different country. I mean, if you live in Maryland, it's not that much different than Indiana or Pennsylvania, where I grew up, or Missouri. But if you get to Miami, and Tom can attest to it, I mean, English is like not the first language down there. It's a totally different world, and it is insane. And I mean that in a good way. But just the whole vibe and culture down there was, and atmosphere was just fascinating to me.
Well, that's Florida in a nutshell. I mean, my place is like 25 miles west of Daytona Beach, and I mean, I know a few guys and a couple of guys in NASCAR, distance acquaintances, and I mean, I can ride over to the Speedway in 25 or 30 minutes, and I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, I just love riding my motorcycle up and down, Highway 1792 outside my subdivision. I mean, it's just the whole thing about Florida. Once you get south of I-4 or I-4 and south, it's like it is a different world. It's the roads are smooth and it's hot and it's just. But
well, somebody once said Miami was the northernmost city of South America.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But that's what's so cool about this podcast, though. I mean, you just said a huge mouthful there about how film and quality videography had a huge influence on you. I mean, I've been fascinated by the fact that, Walt Disney was really, in essence, he was a model railroader. And Disney World is really nothing more than a one-to-one model railroad. And, it's just, the hobby is such it's a bigger than we realize. I'm endless.
There's a lot. I think we've only touched the surface with what we can do with it. It's an individual decision. I mean, some people just want a little bit of casual relaxation, and other people want to be immersed in it more than others.
So let me ask you a point blank question then, because I'm looking at. Let me see. I'm going to look at not the downtown spur, like East Rail. No, not East Rail. Let me look again here. Hang on. Don't tell me. Yeah, like Los Angeles Junction. This is a layout you built at some point.
Yeah, I took a break and just sometimes I have a hard time staying focused, but I always wanted to build that. And I realized that I had room in this den in the corner to pull it off. So I slowed down a little bit on the downtown spur and built that in the corner upstairs. So I have 3 layouts.
Yeah, but okay. So let me ask you a point blank question, blunt question, to get an answer to help me, because this is the kind of thing I think is really cool that I could see myself building. But it's one track. It's like what's the overall size? Like 10 by 4 or something like that.
About 10 by 4 L.
Yeah. Okay. Here comes my point blank question. What's the point? There's hardly any track on it.
Well, I think the point is that we tend to, and this gets to, you were asking about, the model railroading as art, and we tend to look at it through the lens of the only thing that, the only purpose of a model railroader, the only thing it can do for us is, running the trains or the joy of putting it together. But the third aspect is, and it doesn't get enough attention, is just to look at the thing like you would a painting or a sculpture. So actually, that it will spin off a half-hour operating session because of the car spots. But to answer your question directly, Lionel, is I just like looking at it.
Right. Like, I think that's something that's kind of an important point that we could really develop is, years and years and years ago, I had a friend come by and see my layout, and he wasn't any kind of a model railroader whatsoever. And he was walking around just, fascinated by the thing. And he looked at me and he says, "This is like 3D art," which
It is.
Yeah, I took it as a huge compliment. And that's something like not all layouts have to have great operating schemes. Like this is a perfect example of. I mean, I'm looking at some of the photos here. Like there's one photo here of a boxcar at a railroad crossing, and you've got a truck with pallets on it. And I mean, that looks that is a model scene, right? I mean, that's even to complete that's doing something. Like that truck with all the pallets on it just looks like so real. There's so much you can do, and I think that's what Bruce often talks about the small British layouts, and I mean, there's a lot of joy to be taken from building a layout such as the Los Angeles. What is it called? The
Los Angeles Junction.
Yeah, there's a lot of satisfaction to be taken from building a layout like that.
Oh, it was a blast. I mean, and just driving up and walking it and taking the photographs, seeing it in full size. It was.
Well, and that goes to your cinematography side, though, too, Lance, is that some of the videos that you're able to take, you can make it look like you got, a 5-6 car train pulling through the scene. As soon as it gets off a frame, the person doesn't necessarily realize that the train maybe has, no other cars behind it or something of that nature, because you're looking at it even from a video side, and you're going to create this area is getting switched. You don't have to show that it has maybe a 15-car train getting, switched out in an area if you're shooting a video as if you're on a miniature set. And I mean, that to me is the kind of the thought process that's a little different than, everybody always thinks, well, everything has to be seen. There can be no rails that go off the edge of the railroad, and your stuff from the angles and the shots that you take can make it look like it is a 1-to-1 full-size deal. And when you're looking at stuff like that, I guess just as a modeler, what do you think is that next wave? What's the next thing that's coming where you say that we don't think we've reached that certain point?
I'm going to answer it a different way. I don't think it's going to be the next wave, but I would say it is an area where so much more could be done. So I'm going to answer it differently. I don't know that there would be enough level of interest out there. I think rail photography is not as doesn't have as many followers. I kind of put it up there with wiring ditch lights, but but I'm one of those Tom and I were joking about our least favorite aspect of the hobby, and we agreed it was wiring ditch lights. But still photography does not have a great following, but I think one frontier that's been totally unexplored is videography. And we have this pattern where all of the videos are shot from a scale 100 to 150 feet above ground. The trains are moving pretty quickly. It just doesn't look like the real thing. And Tom and I have a mutual friend, Toga Urbora, who's a masterful videographer down in Miami. And watching a well-done video of an actual train is a totally different experience than a model railroad. The sound is different. Just the sense of mass is different. And in looking at that, it was like, if we could get anywhere close to that, it just changes the viewing experience entirely. So I do think that high quality videography is something that is just a frontier that's been untouched at this point.
Well, and that's where Tom comes in, because I was drawn into his channel based on the fact that he was shooting stuff kind of that real 1-to-1 on the ground and telling the story. And I think you're right. If you go into that videography side of things, is it going to push people to look at their railroads a little different and not from that drone footage or that helicopter view? Because I think a lot of your shots and a lot of the stuff that you've even posted and you have in your books is from a more realistic perspective.
Telling another funny Tony Custer story. I think one of it is trains of.
Before you go on, Lance, we kind of have a rule here. You tell the story, and then we'll determine whether or not it's funny.
No, I don't like that rule. So I think one of Tony's more influential articles on me was he wrote in his Trains of Thought. He wrote an article on camera angle, and the point of it was the lower you drop the camera, the better the image looks. And it just seems so profound to me that it always stuck with me. And I was at Cocoa Beach, and I mentioned to him, I said, that article you did in Trains of Thought, had such an influence on how I view layouts and photograph them. He goes, I have absolutely no recollection of that. And because he, how many thousand articles has he written? So I just thought it was funny that something that I thought made such a big difference to me, he didn't even remember writing.
Well, even in that case, though, on it, Lance, it's still that matter of when we look at it with our own eyes. I get down to track level, and I like looking at it that way. And not even regular modelers a lot of times will go helicopter view. But if that changed your perspective just from an article standpoint, is there anything else that stuck out that Tony had written or done that influenced you that we're obviously getting to reap the benefits from, that you have put in your books or even just experience in your own model railroading?
It's really hard when you grow up reading something all your life, and you tend to think, oh, this was my idea, that's idea, and you go, what the heck? I read that 15 years ago. I didn't make that up. So, I started in the hobby when I was 16, and my first recollection was MR and RMC when Tony was doing all that work from RMC. So to answer your question, he's probably been one of the biggest influences on me overall. So almost everything, I would say.
Well, that's cool. I mean, that just speaks volumes to what Tony's done, and in a way, it's echoing the stuff that you're doing. I always look at it in the fine art world is masters always look to other masters. I mean, that's how they got to where they were. And, even for yourself to then look to Tony, and then you got Tom or myself looking to you as an inspiration in the hobby. It's definitely cool. And I definitely appreciate and thanks for being willing to share the information that you've kind of learned along the way and put it into formats that we can attain without having to email you to get that information. We can just buy one of your books.
I think that's how the bar really moves forward. I mean, if you can have one generation that just bumps the bar up a little bit from the previous, so you're just building on the shoulders of the people before you. And if you can just keep each successive generation move the bar up a little, then that's how things progress.
So, Tom, had your friendship with Lance pretty much blossomed before you started your current layout?
Yes. Yeah. When I met Lance, I was down in Miami, and I had my CSX Hawks Ridge layout, which you can see if you go onto my website. You can see the old track plan and stuff. And Lance he saw the layout, and he ended up talking to Andy Sperandio, and then Lance encouraged me to write an article for Andy Sperandio, which was the first article that I did, which ended up in the How to Build More Layout in Less Space special issue in 2010. So it was through Lance that I ended up starting to write. So I credit him with cursing me with having to do all these articles and books and things like that, because he got me started, and now I just keep following up and keep going on. But we had talked before that, and then I moved to my current house in 2011. And that's when I started. I had a year before I started the layout. So I started the layout in 2013. And I developed the layout with a lot of Lance's influence and reading his books and less is more. And I kept struggling with that. And the more I cut out, the better the track plan got. And it looked more like a Lance Mindheim layout, which was perfect. And I appreciate a lot of the help and guidance that he gave me through reading his books and through talking and stuff about, you don't need to cram everything in, leave some space, make it look more realistic, all these other things that, I was struggling with, and through Lance's help, that's why I was able to kind of achieve where I'm at right now with the Georgia Northeastern layout.
So, Lance, when do you think you started to come to the realization that less is more?
I think it was reality set in when I had that old Monon layout, and I was like, that was the first real run at having a model railroad, and I thought, wow, N scale will allow me to have twice as much, which is not true. It's actually 4 times as much. And like everybody else, I want this and I want that, and I'm gonna had all these master plans for a double deck. And then, are you guys familiar with what a tractor pull is?
I sure am.
Oh yeah.
Yep, we know.
Yes.
So, so it's like the proverbial tractor pull.
Well,
Boy, I was so
let's explain it to everybody else, because I'm sure there are people that aren't familiar with tractor pulls. I'll go first. A tractor pull is usually at a county fair of some sort, and there's this big heavy sled where the weight moves closer and closer to the tractor, and you back up your tractor, and there's all sorts of divisions. Some farmers will just bring their stock tractor, and some people will bring tractors that are built specifically for tractor pulls, and other guys will bring their pickup trucks. And basically what you do is you pull this sled where the weight slides closer and closer to the vehicle, the pulling vehicle, and then when you can't pull it anymore, you stop.
and eventually the weight becomes and the weight and the leverage becomes so much, no matter how powerful the tractor, eventually it will grind it to a halt.
Yeah, the only exception I've seen to that is those steam tractors that a couple have just kept on pulling and run out of track.
But so that's basically what a tractor pull is. And now I'm fascinated to find out where we're going.
Yeah.
So my honest,
Yeah.
so I'll make the leap. There is a leap, but I was so excited. I had all this space, and N-Scale allowed me to fill this 20 by 20 foot with it. And I was so excited, and I just added more and more things to the overall theme. And that first year, I was just like that tractor. The first 20 feet out of the gate. Well, then reality kind of hit in terms of this monster that I had bitten off. And just like the tractor pull with the weight, I ground to a halt. It was just too much. There was just no, there's only so many hours in a day. The railroad was just too big. And to get to your original question is, how did I come to the realization that less is more? It's like, why the heck am I building this why do I need all these things when I'm not even going to be able to either complete or even interact with a third of what I'm done? It's just wasted effort because I don't have the time to build it. But even if I could flip a switch and it was done, it would just be too much to take in and interact with. So, it's the old, what's the expression? Your eyes are bigger than your stomach when you go to a buffet.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So
at some point building this N-scale layout, you just kind of ground to a halt and said, this is, but what led you to realizing, okay, now I can build the Los Angeles Junction, and it's basically, 10 feet by 4 feet with a little tiny bit of track and some buildings, and this is going to satisfy me.
The next one was the East Rail, and I didn't know it at the time. But I was interested in Florida, and I thought I didn't have any grand plan. I just said, well, I have room in that corner of my workshop. I'll put this switching layout in because I didn't have the heart to tear the Monon one down. And I didn't want to admit that it wasn't working for me. So I put this switching layout up and just kept it small, just kind of as a side venture. And it became more and more apparent that, number one, I was enjoying it a heck of a lot more. And I was spending all my time with it just because it was manageable.
Right.
So it wasn't a grand plan. I didn't have the foresight going in that it would work out that way. I just kind of did it as a lark, and it ended up being enlightening.
Yeah. And now it was the East Rail was basically a 10 foot by 10 foot layout, approximately 16 inches wide, with a fair amount more track, but still, basically, I think that's the thing. I think it's manageable is the key. I mean, it depends on who you are. Some guys are quite suited to building large layouts because they have a ton of energy and they can keep going. And I think Dave Abelys, for example, I mean, he's built a large layout, and it seems to be nothing for him to do that because he's he's like the Tasmanian devil. He's always moving.
I think Tony is like that, and Mike Burgett.
Burgett, yeah.
But for us real mortals, I'm not that fast of a modeler.
Okay,
I'm just not that fast.
So let's lead to the next obvious question. And before we go on, William, Bill, have you, Lance? Have you seen the shelf layout that William built in his spare bedroom?
No, I'd love to. If you could email it to me tomorrow, that would be great.
Unless you own a copy of Tom's book, it's in there.
I do have a copy of Tom's book.
Yeah, Tom, that's what kind of got Tom and I on the same page as far as the modeling world. But if you do look in there, it's the Sue the Milwaukee Road. And I'm
hold that thought for 20 seconds. I am going to go get Tom's book. Hold on.
But then, Tom, I guess to ask you the question while Lance runs to get your book, just from the selection process that you even kind of went through of looking at different railroads, how did you go about picking the railroads for putting together your book, The Right Size Railroad?
Well,
okay, I'm back.
He's back. He's back
with the book in hand.
Okay, there it is. So, to answer your question, William, I was just looking for achievable layouts, basically, that would fit in one room, focused on short lines or branch lines. So it would be an achievable layout, something that wasn't massive, a good first project layout, or maybe for somebody that was downsizing. And then it was just recommendations from some friends. One of the layouts that I feature in there is based on the Coosa Pines, Alabama, which is a good friend of mine, Tom Holly, worked the job as the engineer. So he's my prototype reference, and I ask him all kinds of prototype information. Well, he talked about working this paper mill. Sounds very interesting. So we went over there, did some rail fanning of it, and he's knew everything about it because he'd been there for so many years. So got me kind of pointed in that direction. The other one, Hazelhurst, was another railroad that he recommended to me. And then your layout, which kind of ties in everything with switching the grain elevators, looking for a little bit different features, scenic features. In yours, featuring so many of the grain elevators and up in the Minnesota area. So I was looking for a little bit of difference in the territory, if you will. And then of course my layout, which is based here in Georgia on a short line, which runs from Marietta up to the state line.
Well, you bring a lot of great variety to it, and I think that's where, as a modeler, to be able to see different examples. And I know Lance has a few different, how to design a small switching layout. And there's one, I think you got one on eight realistic track plans, and that's what I did. I worked off of a realistic track plan for mine, and then did have to use a little selective compression. But a lot of my buildings are fairly close to 1-to-1. And aren't you doing very similar to that, Lance? Are you doing 1-to-1 on your spur layout?
No, they are mostly compressed, and that's kind of I would be hard pressed to write an article on that. It's just kind of a gut instinct, but most of them are compressed.
What do you think compression wise, like in your world, how much do you think you're compressing? Because you give the look that they're a regular full size large structure.
Probably about a third, I think.
Okay. And you're in your room, I think, is around 20 by 18 or 17 by 20?
Yeah, I think it's like 18 by 20. I'd have to go look, but that's about the size of it.
So, I mean, structurally, it's not, a lot of times we think to ourselves, mine is only in about a 12 by 15-ish size room. And
it says here 12. It says here 12 by 10. It's right here.
Well, that's the accurate number. You got it right, Lionel. I think, Tom, we've talked back and forth before. That's the accurate number. So 12 by 10, and I'm just working along two walls. As a modeler, when you went into your space, Lance, how did you determine how you're going to use that space? I went for open center area because there's a Murphy bed that drops down in that room, so it's still a guest room. But in your space, how did you decide to walk in there and utilize that space?
And there's not just a Murphy bed. There's also a portable office for your wife in there.
Yeah, it's a multi-purpose room for sure.
Exactly. Is she still using it as an office?
Yep, still is.
Yeah, like you got in this 10 by 12 room. You've got a model railroad, a shelf layout, a Murphy bed, a workstation for your wife for her job. And it's all in a 10 by 12 bay. And by the way, your layout design is on page 54 of Building the Right Size Layout by Thomas Klimoski. What's that?
54. I see it.
54.
I've got it. Very nice.
Yeah. See that? Look at that. See that, Tom? You sent me this. Is your copy autographed, Lance?
Tom?
No, I didn't sign it for him. He got his copy without me signing it.
Yeah.
Did you get your copy with me signing it?
No.
Yes, you did.
Oh, man.
I have a copy of your latest book, and it hasn't been signed either. So
Come on, guys.
I'm going to rank him. I'm going to make him
down.
feel guilty on the air here.
Mine says to my friend Lionel right on the inside cover.
I sold one of your books today, Tom. I'll be awaiting my commission next time I see you.
Perfect.
How is the book sales going there, Tom?
Not as well as Dave Abeley's, but I talked to Kalmbach the other day, and it says we're meeting the goals. It's about a little bit over 50% sold out.
Wow, so that's pretty good.
That's good.
So that's all right.
Yeah.
I'll take it. It's at least it's more than the ones that Scott thought he was going to sell with the proto throttle.
Yeah, that's a whole different ball.
That's a whole different. Yeah.
Have you ever used a proto throttle, Lance?
No, because I would love to, but it does not work with the easy DCC system that I have. And if I ever switch it over to NCE, then I'll get one. But I'd love to try. I've seen them. I've used them at Cocoa Beach.
How old is Easy DCC?
As a company?
Yeah, well, yeah, like the system you have.
Oh, the system I have is I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. But I talked to Scott; they just don't support that particular system.
What exactly is Easy DCC?
You're asking the wrong person. This is somebody that doesn't know how to wire ditch lights.
I think it came out originally a series in MR.
It was actually building your own system.
You're building your own system at DCC.
You can buy the parts
MR.
and
You can
put them
buy
together.
the parts and put together. Yeah.
Well,
and they decided to build them.
If I ever meet a guy that builds layouts for a living professionally, he'll know the question, because when he dealing with his customers, he'd be like, well, here's what I use. This is probably what you want. We'll get.
I would just say, how the hell do I know? Here's the manual. Read it.
We're going to get to that in a little bit. All right, where were we at? We were
You were asking how I got the bench work footprint, and usually the first thing I do is just line the walls, and then play around with the center peninsula. I mean, that's there's only so many ways you can work it in there. But to answer William's questions, I drew it to scale, lined the walls, probably made the bench work a little wider than I needed to, and then played around with just different peninsula arrangements. Like a lot of these branches are just a straight line. So once you have the bench footprint, you just kind of thread the line through it.
Okay, so you're just making the flex points just at areas where you're not going to have industries, and then work it back into the peninsula and so forth.
Yep.
So exactly how many layouts do you have personally? 3. And they
one big one and 2.
How many have you done, Lance?
Oh yeah, we're getting
for other
to
people.
We're getting to that.
Okay. I don't mean to jump ahead of you there, Lionel.
We're getting to that. So you have 3 layouts. You have the
the downtown spur is my main one.
Right.
Then I have the Los Angeles Junction, which it's more a work of art, but I do play with that. And then the Brooklyn layout, which is an N scale.
And the East Rail does not exist.
It was sold to Greg Lures, and then he sold it to a friend of his. So I think it's in storage in Indiana somewhere.
Oh, okay. So people keeps moving around the country. Wow. How many? Okay, so let's get to that question, Bill. So just exactly. So you're a professional model railroad layout builder. How did that start? I mean, I know I've asked you before, and I don't care, because there's a bazillion of these podcasts now, and people want to hear it again. So and now you got a great headset. So
thank you, by the way.
You're welcome.
You're not going to ask for this back, are you?
No, but you will get a bill. You will get a bill for $532. It's a rental. You just didn't realize that. It's an official AML headset. So just exactly, how did you decide? How did you fall into the career of building model railroads professionally?
Well, I didn't jump into it right off the bat. in my prior career, I was in sales for 20 years, and it's an experience I would never trade for anything. That's really your PhD in life is, if you have a career in sales, but it's also very stressful and you tend to get burned out. And with the company I was working with, you are fully vested after 17 years. So about the 15-year mark, it's like, all right, I'm learning a lot, but I'm getting really burned out on this. 2 years from now, I can pull the plug and, they'll give me some money to leave. And I started thinking about other occupations, and I was all over the place. I mean, it's not an easy decision. Read books on picking careers, and model railroading has always been my passion, but I didn't want to just go into it, on a lark. I wanted it to be a business that would support me. I had looked at different aspects, manufacturing, and at one point, Model Railroader had done an article on these guys that build it for a living, or that do this for a living. And I thought, I think I can do this. And so I started my present company 2 years before I retired from the other one. So I was working 2 jobs. And then when this one took off, then I just retired from the other one. So it was a long process. I wanted to make sure that this was going to make it before I retired from the other one. So that's why there was a 2-year overlap.
So what constitutes a model railroad construction business taking off? What was it that gave you the indication that it had taken off?
That you make enough money that you can have a middle class lifestyle in an American city. And when you're self-employed, there are no guarantees. I mean, if you're an employee, there's no guarantees. You can be canned at any time. But I guess more of a gut instinct that I was getting enough inquiries and not necessarily being swamped, but I could see that there was a market out there.
And how did people get How did people get in touch with you initially?
Advertising in Model Railroader,
okay.
Because different magazines cater to different types of modelers. So if I put an ad in RMC, these guys are master craftsmen; they're going to build it themselves. So that probably wouldn't be the best place. Whereas Model Railroader has more beginners and just a bigger base. So initially, that's where I got most of my business. Then as the articles, books and articles came out, more people became aware of me through that. But originally, it was through ads through Model Railroader.
And how many layouts have you built for in the year? So you've been doing this for what? How long have you been a professional model railroad layout builder?
22 years now. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, it is hard to believe.
Started in 2000.
How old of a man are you?
So see, I'm trying to think. 22. I'm just trying to. I'd have to count, but some years I only do one. Some have been so big it takes me 2 years, and some I do 3. But so maybe 35 I've built. 30, 35.
And you never get burned out or anything? Like the enthusiasm is still there?
It is. I mean, that's, you found your calling when you can work on these all day and then have dinner and go work on your own all night. I'm a sick puppy. I just never get tired of it.
All right. Well, let me ask you my favorite question. What is it about this hobby that draws people to it? I mean, you're the perfect person to ask. What is it about this hobby that makes, it seems like a hobby that once you get in, you can't get out. Like it's always in your blood somehow. I think
that as human beings, we are hardwired for artistic expression and just the satisfaction of putting things together, whether it's an RC plane, a boat, a cabinet, crafting. I mean, there's just something in our DNA that we find very satisfying about taking nothing and making it into something. And then I think on top of railroading is just the romance of the rails. It's just a very compelling subject.
That's what I've always thought. It's kind of that, the ribbon of rail going around, bending around a corner. There's a place not far from my house where the CP main line is, and every time I cross this particular level crossing, I look to the right, and the rail bends around the corner and disappears into the bush, and it's just a kind of a romantic looking. It's just an appealing thing. It's just the romance of the rails. So some of these layouts have taken you more than a year.
Yes, because I've had experience in project management, and it was a good experience, but I do not want to be managing a bunch of cats. So I've made the decision that I don't want to be a shop where I'm the president and I'm managing other artisans that are doing what I actually want to be doing.
Right.
So I'm a one-person shop, and I do have excellent subcontractors in terms of some of the sub-assemblies, the woodworking and electronics. But as a one-person artisan, if it's a really large detailed layout, it's going to take me a while.
And do I remember correctly, the last time we interviewed, I talked to you, and by the way, how much has your life changed since the last time I interviewed you?
I do not have a very exciting life. I don't think it has changed at all.
Oh.
I think my hairline has receded a little bit. I'm a little fatter.
So that's something.
Other than that, not much.
So all you future guests on the Modeler's Life podcast can look forward to having your hairline recede.
That's right. I blame you.
So if I remember correctly, when you build these layouts, I think you told me that primarily they're built to a stage where it's bench work, track work, electrical, but a lot of the times scenery and structures are left up to the guy that buys the layout. Is that pretty much what you told me before?
At the time, that was true, although since then, I don't know if it's just a cycle. I've been doing more finished layouts recently. So at the time you asked me, that was the case, but lately I've been doing more finished ones. So I don't know if it's
the last layout that you finished, the last layout that you delivered, how big was it?
I would say, well, I'm going up there tomorrow to do some more installation work, but maybe 12 by 20.
And is it the one that's completely finished, or what state is?
Yep, it's 100% finished with lots of automation, a lot of lights. That took me a year to build.
It's good to have a lot of automation and lights when you don't really like wiring or understand it.
Well, no, I just said ditch light wiring. I don't mind doing. I like wiring and and electronics. I just don't like doing the ditch lights.
Okay, that's kind of cool, eh? I mean, that people would. I find that's pretty a neat aspect of the hobby that people are, and I'm assuming a lot of the people that you build for are just busy people that really don't have the time to build a layout or the desire to build a layout, but they'd love to have one.
Yeah, a lot of them are pretty busy, and surprisingly, I would say almost half of them are doctors, and they work really hard. And I don't know why that profession is drawn to model railroading more than, say, attorneys or CPAs or others, but half of them are physicians.
Probably the desire for fine scale miniatures, I guess. Who were we talking to, Bruce, just recently? Was it last night when we were talking, or was somebody we were talking and somebody mentioned that it's miniatures you're drawn to?
That was last night we were talking, yeah.
Yeah, and that's
yeah. What's the fascination with the miniatures? Yeah,
yeah. What do you
trains, planes, automobiles, whatever, ships, miniatures?
What do you think? Go ahead, Lance.
I have a funny doctor story for you. It's
hang on a minute. Again, you see, we have that rule, but you don't.
It's funny to me. I'll let you. I will let. See, you have the power of the editing, so you can. You can bleep me out. You can take the F word out. So anyway, I had a customer who's a doctor up in Philadelphia, probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met, and he's very mechanically gifted. He just didn't have a lot of time, and so the layout took a while, about a year, and in the budget, I had allowed a week to put this thing in his home because it was pretty involved. So I unload the modules, I lay them out in his basement, and after a long day, I go back to the hotel. And I come back the next morning, and the thing is almost put together. I said, what? And he said, he goes, I'm sorry, I've been waiting for this all my life. I was up all night. So while I was asleep, he pulled all the modules together, clipped them together, got the track hooked up, and to make a long story short, between the two of us, this thing was done in 2.5 days.
Because he was so excited to run.
Yep. Beautiful.
And do you supply? Does the customer supply most of the cars and locomotives, or have you ever built a layout where you supply the cars and locomotives as well because the person's just not familiar enough with the hobby?
No, that's never come up. What I will do sometimes is I will borrow their existing rolling stock to test it. But a lot of them live vicariously by buying rolling stock and structures while they're waiting for when they can have a layout. So they usually have a lot of stuff already.
Okay. So what's the farthest away that you've delivered a layout?
Ooh, I've had 3. I'm on the East Coast, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Seattle, and San Diego were the 3 furthest.
Man,
Wow.
that must have been a momentous job. You had to rent a truck, I guess, and drive across country. And
the first 2, and then this organization that's kind of come into its own since Pods has made it a lot easier. They just drop the container off, and it's exactly the same dimensions as a box truck. And I just carefully pack it in the pods, and they pick it up, and I fly out. So that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, that would make it a lot easier. All right, so I'm going to go around the horn here, and because this is my endless. I decided this is my quest with the podcast is to discover what the fascination of model railroading is, because I truly believe that it's a hobby that the people that are in it just are in it. They just love it. I mean, you never leave. You just never leave. You can try to get out, but you can't.
Well, Lionel,
Hotel
you
California.
make the comment that eventually the whole world is going to be covered in the railroad goo thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think people step on it or they get stuck in it, and then they're cemented in that, and then it's a contagious type of element, and that's where the railroad addiction starts.
Don't you think that?
And it's interesting that people give it up in their 20s will come back to it in their 60s.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Like once you have that fascination for model railroading, it's always there. I think people that'll give it up in their 20s will, pick up the odd magazine. Nowadays they'll look at it on the internet. I mean, I think it never leaves. So, William, what do you think the fascination is with miniatures?
I think it really is taking what the large locomotives that you see, and as a kid, they're larger than life, and you look at that and think, oh, geez, that's, it's pretty impressive. Well, then to be able to scale that down, and like I mentioned earlier, I watch and look at a lot of railroads just at eye level, and you're brought back down to that, basically the kid in you, and it brings you back in time. I feel like a lot of modelers, and I don't know if Lance or Tom or you guys can speak to the era that is selected. Mine is 1985. I was 5 years old. My dad does 1970. He was 10 years old. So what brings us back to that time? And is it your childhood? Is it, what is it that is drawing you back? And for me, I think that's what it is. I think it's bringing you back, and it's taking something that was larger than life and being able to kind of scale it down and enjoy it basically on a modeling level.
Okay, so you're specifically talking trains. Then what would be the fascination to those out there who are building models of say World War II armor or ships, sailing ships? Guys are building great models of sailing ships,
right,
aircraft,
like you say,
all that stuff.
modelers.
So what's the the equipment? Why do people want to recreate something in miniature?
I still feel like it's that whole element of things that are larger than life. I mean, what's cooler than a B-52? And then you can build that B-52 in scale and put the detail in. And sometimes it's putting in the interior. I built P-38s, P-51s. I did a lot of World War II models as a kid. And I still feel like it's that fascination because I'd go to air shows as a kid and you see a P-38 ripping down the runway. I mean, you get excited. I mean, that's an adrenaline rush. And you're basically kind of capturing, I feel like, a lot of those memories and elements in that size. And no, I mean, I'm not old enough to obviously be in World War II, but I can appreciate and respect the military as well as all the equipment that they had. That was a pretty ballsy thing to do, to hop into a P-38 and go flying around in the Pacific. So to me, I think there's a little bit more of that tied to it of kind of a, those guys were kind of badass in their time. And it's pretty cool to be flying in those type of aircraft and then scale that thing down. I think that's what a lot of it is. I think with the railroads, the ships can be the same way. But Lance, what is your take on the miniature world? What brings your interest into the hobby and building small replicas?
Well, you said it so well, William. I could cop out and say, yeah, what he said, because I think you really hit the nail on the head. Although for me, there would be a slight tweak, and it's not so much the memories. It would be everything William said, but it's taking this compelling theme just of railroading, and it would apply the same as what you said as far as the aircraft. I think it's the same thing. So it's a bridge between this fascinating subject, these massive locomotives, and just the environment that they operate in, and then bridging that to having a copy of it in our home, plus the satisfaction of artistic expression and the satisfaction of putting things together. So I agree with William. I would just say it's less about the memories and more, I could have the same passion for it if it's something I just went out and saw this afternoon.
But that's that tie into that 3D art again, like you said earlier.
Excuse me. I think one of them is that you see it, and it'd be nice to have a 1-to-1 scale locomotive, but that's not reality for most people. So the next best thing is an HO scale or O scale or in scale model. And that allows you to put yourself in the seat of that locomotive. I know for me, I enjoyed working on the Georgia Northeastern and sitting in the cab of a GP10. Well, I don't have that capability anymore, but I can do the same thing through my models. I can basically put myself in the cab of that model locomotive and envision what it'd be like to operate it. And I think one of the fascinations also with model railroading over some of the other hobbies is that our models move and interact with the scenery and the other things that we create. If you're building a static model of a P50, P51 or whatever, unless it's a remote control or radio control aircraft, it doesn't fly. It just sits there on the shelf. But our models actually move, and we can interact with them, and we can envision how these locomotives and cars would be moved and how the trains would move from point A to point B. So I think that's maybe one of the appeals of model railroading over some of the other hobbies, because we can interact with them. And it's such a multifaceted hobby, as Lance mentioned. You've got all these different skills of woodworking and electrical and model building and electronics and stuff. Some of the other hobbies don't have that. It's the craft of assembling these plastic models or painting the war game models. So I think model railroading kind of has a little edge on some of those other hobbies because there's so many skills that you need to have, which can also be intimidating to people because you got to say, well, I can't just build, I have to do all these other things, and I'm not good at scenery or I'm not good at weathering. So I think that's part of the fascination with the hobby and also with the miniatures is that's something you'd like to have a 1-to-1 scale model of it, but since that's not reality for most people now, the next best thing is building a model of it, whether it's an aircraft, a ship, or a train.
Yeah, you're right about the 1-to-1, but I don't think I'd really want a 1-to-1 locomotive unless I had a lot of track to run it on. So, then the next best thing is to have an HO scale or an O scale, any scale, and have some track to run it on at the very least. So
on the 1-to-1, and you say, honey, look what I got.
Yeah.
There could be some raised eyebrows.
Well, and a covered hopper, a 1-to-1 covered hopper is interesting, but it's not as intricate looking or detailed looking as today's version of a covered hopper that you get from these fantastic freight car model freight car companies, like Scale Trains and Rapido and Tangent and Moco and all these guys. Lance, who's your favorite? Do you have a favorite man? Where do you buy most of your supplies?
eBay.
Yeah.
No, I would say that. I'm just trying to think. In terms of suppliers, model train stuff is in Baltimore. They're close. What's the outfit in New York City and Brooklyn? Train World.
Train World.
Yep, Train World, model train stuff.
I think you got Yankee Dabblers out there too, aren't they?
And a lot of it's just I become familiar with some of them. And then a ton of stuff on eBay because I've found that the eBay suppliers, they are hungry. They will get this stuff out, particularly with custom building. I don't have to sit on an order for 10 days waiting for somebody to fill it. A lot of these eBay guys, you place an order and it's in the mail to you that afternoon. So to me, that's a big selling point.
So what would you buy on eBay, like track and stuff?
Anything, but a lot of this last project had a lot of structures, but anything really.
So how long is it? So this last project was basically a complete layout except for the rolling stock. And what was the theme of it?
I would call it proto-freelance Philadelphia. Even though it wasn't huge, it was very dense. It was pretty much wall-to-wall structure. So he didn't want to, I wouldn't call him a prototype modeler, but he wanted the sense of Philadelphia because that's where he lives now and where he grew up. You know, he remembers living in a townhouse and seeing the trolleys go out, you know, down the street in front of his house, and he has so many fond memories of that. So it's just kind of a proto-freelance, trying to catch the flavor of Philadelphia without modeling any particular aspect.
So so somebody contacts you, they tell you what you want. They want a Philadelphia layout in a 12 by 15 foot room or whatever it is. And like, how do you determine the price? And you don't have to speak price if you don't want to, but how do you determine that? Is there a formula that you use to kind of say?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, and it would apply to any business. And I would say for anybody that wants to do this, if you don't run it like a business, if you run it like a hobby, you will be out of business very quickly. But to answer your question, I add up the cost of supplies. I add up the cost of the installation, which could be a fairly large amount depending on where it is. I figure out how long it's going to take me and multiply that times my salary. So I add up my salary, overhead, supplies, and installation, and that's the price.
And how do you figure out how long the layout's going to take you? Is it just experience you've been able to, like, is there any layout where you went, wow, that went a lot faster than I thought, or geez, this took a lot longer than I thought?
A lot of it just comes from gut, and then I do keep very detailed records of every project, and there is a lot of similarity. So this last one, but they never match completely. So to answer your question, a lot of it is just kind of going by your gut. And I'm usually pretty close. If I feel like I'm behind, then it's like, well, I better work a couple Saturday mornings here to catch up. But usually it's not. There's been no disasters where I really ran way over.
Fascinating. So okay, let's check. Let's let everybody know what your websites are. The websites? What are they? What they're called? Why am I stumbling? Why am I stumbling?
Well, I just have two. LanceMindheim.com is my personal one. So
just two?
My name.
Just two?
Two. And then the other one is shelflayouts.com.
So why do you have two? Because shelflayouts.com, is that where people go to, like, how do either of these layouts have anything to do with your building model railroads?
Yeah, the Shelf Layouts is my professional site where I have to watch what I say and be very professional and not be myself and just kind of put the corporate stuff out there. The personal site is where I just kind of do more freeform, like you and I and Tom and William are talking now, and just whatever comes to my mind, I can just throw it out there.
All right.
So the personal one's much more casual.
All right. Custom built model railroads by one of the hobby's leading craftsmen.
Did I put that in? That's pretty arrogant.
Yeah,
that's a really nice work website that you have there, right, Lance?
Yes, my work website was done by one Ryan Klimoski, the offspring of Thomas Klimoski, and Ryan did a great job. And I would say Ryan was exceptionally easy to work with.
Well, there you go.
It must be the genes.
Got to be the genes.
I've trained him well.
And he's gone off he works for a computer company now, doesn't he, Tom?
He works for Wix, which is a website hosting. It's similar to like GoDaddy. People are familiar with GoDaddy. It's where you can go and build your own website, and then they offer services where they can help you build and design your website. And he's working right now in quality assurance for them. So he works with the company and deals with issues that come up with the websites and stuff.
Yeah, that's
actually they're better. They're better than GoDaddy.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
I use Weebly, and I was going back and forth between Wix and Weebly. I think I would have gone with Wix had I known more about it at the time. But this is the one that Weebly was the one that Luke Towan used, and I figured, well, if it's good enough for him, it should be good enough for me. I think Weebly and Wix are the kind of like GM and Ford. GoDaddy is a different animal altogether. It's like Dodge.
I was not real thrilled with that hack. and they didn't tell anybody about it. A million of their managed WordPress sites, of which I had one, were hacked, and a blog reader said, "Boy, these blogs are really getting crazy. Did you write this?" And I was like, "What the heck?" And somebody had jumped into them and overwritten them, but GoDaddy didn't tell anybody, and I found out about it on the news. Not happy.
You were not happy. Okay, so let's get to and your other. So I was just looking at shelflayouts.com. If people want to talk to Lance about getting a layout built, that's where they go, shelflayouts.com. But your other site, lancemindheim.com, is your personal site, and it has a ton of cool stuff. And how many books, if you go to the bookstore, how many? I just see you've just written recently, you wrote How to Design a Model Railroad. Is that your most recent one?
That's the most recent one. So I think that was number 8. I think that was the 8th. I'd have to count.
And why did you decide to do that with Model Railroader rather than do it on your own, as it seems like most of your books are done independently?
They've always had a place in my heart. I mean, I go back to my very beginning days when I first entered in the hobby, and Jeff Wilson, who was my first editor, was the one that really gave me my start, contacting me. So it was an opportunity to work with Jeff. You get a lot of support. They have more marketing than I can do. So there's pros and cons either way. I'm happy having done both, but I think Tom would agree. They were just great to work with.
Very easy to work with.
Well, that's good.
A lot of very high integrity.
Absolutely.
Company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kalmbach is a very high integrity company. But it seems like the majority of your books are self-published.
Until that one. I may do another one for MR. We're talking about that. So
what would the next book be about?
On the life and times of Lionel Strang.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Is that like a 5-page or a 5-volume set? I'm sure it would be.
Yeah, it's gonna rival the Britney Spears saga.
There you go.
No, the next one would be on structures if we do it. I think we will, but it would be on structures.
And what about you, Tom? Have they talked to you about doing another book?
Not yet. I'm still recovering from this last one. I'm not as proficient as Lance is, and I've got a whole new respect for all these guys that do a book a year or have put out a couple of books. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, right.
It is exhausting. It was all consuming. I think Tom can have. I don't know if they would have held me to the deadline, but and I was crying on Tom's shoulder the whole way. But towards the end, I was working 6 or 7 days a week. I mean, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work writing a book. And it's a lot of work writing a column every month if you where you build something every month. Holy mackerel!
Oh my God!
About 6 or 7 years. At the 6th or 7th year in, I'm thinking, I'm not sure how much farther I can go with this. Okay, so what is your best-selling book of all these books?
That's terrible that I can't answer. What a terrible business person. I think it was How to Design a Small Switching Layout is the best selling so far.
Okay. How many articles have you written, Tom, for Model Railroader?
10.
Attaboy. There you go.
Is that a good answer?
Yeah, that's a good answer. Is that a rounded out?
Yes.
All right.
So 10-ish?
10-ish.
10-ish.
Yes.
Yeah. It's 10. Well, there's I haven't seen it yet, but there's another one that just came out in Model Railroad Planning.
Oh, there you go.
That was just published in the one that came out in January. I mean, I've seen it because I wrote it, but I haven't actually gotten a copy of the magazine yet.
No, I was going to say, did you do it with a blindfold on or something?
No.
Yeah. How about you, Bill? William, have you? I'm always stuck. I think I'm going to go with William from now on. You just seem like a William to me.
Well, it's whatever you're comfortable with. A lot of people, it's what I've grown up with was Bill, but whatever anybody meets me as, a lot of times that's what they stick with.
Can we call you Steve?
Yeah, can we call you Steve?
The guy formerly known as William.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you published anything, or you just? Well, I mean, your YouTube channel is spectacular. We're going to get to that in a minute, but
yeah, but from a printed format, I haven't put any articles or anything like that together. I'm currently working on Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern book. It's a freight car roster, and I'm 2 years worth of research and digging up photos and information. If anybody has any M&S content that they're able to provide me, I'd greatly appreciate it. But I'm 140 pages in. It'll probably be at about 160. And it's really interesting. It's fascinating to me. It is a short line. So in the Minneapolis area, there might not be many people that know what the M&NS is. But I find it fascinating. I find it interesting. I do like the research and the history of it. So if I can compile it into a book, we're looking at probably publishing with the same company that had done the Sioux Line Historical Society freight car roster, because it could be a sister book to that. But in the print world, that's what I'm working on. And you guys, that I know, Lance, you've done 8. That's mind-boggling, my friend, because I'm working on just the one. But again, it's just mostly research and history.
Yeah, and if I can throw something out there, we've talked a bit about Lance's book, but to anybody who's listening to this and has kind of got now the interest or bug for a small switching layout, the 3 books Lance has on how to design, how to build, and how to operate, grab those things. They're value for your money. You will get a ton of good ideas and understand how you can easily accomplish a realistic layout in a relatively small space. So don't hesitate on picking those ones up.
It's how to build a switching layout by Lance Mindheim. How to operate a modern era switching layout by Lance Mindheim, and 8 realistic track plans for small switching layouts by Tom Klimoski. No, by Lance Mindheim. So, and you just go to his website, lancemindheim.com, and scroll across the navigation bar to bookstore, and click on bookstore, and boom, there you go. There'll be like all kinds of books to choose from, and that just give you.
We have Thomas Klimoski, Building the Right Size Layout, from Kalmbach Publishing.
Yes.
We also have that. Absolutely, you want to go check that out. So, anyways, these books are roughly $25 each, and great value for the money. How much is your book, Tom?
Oh, I don't know. You could get it on sale if you're lucky, but it's at the Kalmbach Hobby Store for $21.99.
Okay, there you go.
And you can find it on Amazon, maybe cheaper at your local hobby shop or whatever. So check around, get a good deal on it.
Well, $21.99 isn't unreasonable, I don't think.
No, that's about average these days.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Bruce, I had a thought today. I was driving down the highway. I actually today took my motorcycle jack to our buddy Josh Bowman.
I saw a live field on the snow. You two clowns were freezing like -14 weather.
Yeah, it was brutally cold. But
brisk? He was brisk?
Yeah, it was brisk. It was.
Well, at the end there, our buddy was visibly shaking.
I know.
It's a little cold. Yeah.
Lionel?
Yeah.
I have to get up at 5:15 in the morning, so I'm going to have to run pretty soon.
Okay. I'm not. Okay. You'd want to leave. Are you bored? Is that the problem?
No, I'm not bored. I'm just thinking when I get up at 5:15 tomorrow, drive to Philadelphia.
Okay. And how far is it? How long does it take you to get to Philadelphia?
3 hours.
Wow. And will you stay there, or will you drive home?
I'll drive back.
Oh, like, are you working there like one day a week or something?
Yeah, but I'm almost. This will probably be the last trip.
All right. We'll need more details as we go along. Lance, I feel like look after your headset, because I feel like you'll be on many more times before, but not necessarily for a full length podcast. You'll be on, y'all be looking at your website, and I'll have a question, and I'll be wanting to, talk to you for 15 or 20 minutes. Do you think that's a possibility going forward?
Well, it depends on this. I'm a little concerned about this $532 invoice for the headset.
Well, how about this? If you make yourself available, maybe I can talk to who's ever in charge. And
if you can knock that down to maybe $350, then we can talk.
All right. Okay.
You have to earn that by Mabel in accounting. You know how she is.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We're going to finish this up because Lance has to go to bed and then get up. And so we're going to finish this up. We could have started earlier if you'd wanted to. But I was napping, so that would have been a problem.
Me too.
Okay, so we're just going to do this one thing, then we're going to close the show up. So I was driving down the highway today thinking about this podcast tonight, Bruce.
Yes.
And I was thinking about how Tom Klimoski was the guy that invented the term marginally adequate.
All right.
And Tom, can you just quickly relay how that all transpired?
Well, it started off with you guys trying to give me a score on my evaluation for the Kelly questions. and you came up with a number, and you asked if I thought that was okay, and I said I was shooting for marginally adequate, and that was all I wanted. And that term came to me back when I was a captain on the fire department, because I had an employee that I was supposed to do an evaluation of, and he kept bugging me about getting evaluated. I'm like, fine, I've given you marginally adequate. And he stopped asking me after that. I don't know why he stopped asking. But then you guys took that and ran with it, because you said, oh, that's like the podcast is marginally adequate. And then you threw in the 6 out of 10 and all that other stuff. And then that's kind of where it came up with. But,
yeah, and all of our Patreon members, they get T-shirts that say marginally adequate on it, and it's a great thing. So I'm driving down the highway, Bruce, thinking to myself, I should get Tom to relay that marginally adequate story again, and blah, blah, blah. And then it suddenly struck me like a bolt of lightning from the heavens that if you're a guy that comes up with a saying that's used at the end of many of the shows, it's on a T-shirt, it's become
It's become our slogan.
It's our slogan. It's who we are. We're marginally adequate, and we're proud of that.
Yeah,
we're very proud of that. Should this person not be a super fan?
I was just you bringing it up. I'm thinking there's definite SF qualifications there.
Yeah, if you're the guy that invented the term marginally adequate for Modeler's Life podcast, you, sir, should be a super fan.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, can you accept that honor tonight?
I would be honored to accept the super fandom.
All right, you'll be super fan number 43. But first off, you have to get down on your knees.
Hang on a minute.
Okay, hold on. That's going to take me a while. All right, go ahead.
Find the stuff. Hang on.
You're finding this.
Oh, hey, I found the stapler. Okay. I've got the piece of rail.
All right. So now,
Tom, man, are you slow getting done? Anyhow, just whatever you do, don't move. Okay, don't flinch. This piece of heavy rail, I'm shaking a bit, but I'm under control. So just stay still. All will be well. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Oh, up on the right shoulder, up over left shoulder.
Oh, that's going to be
well done.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well.
Yeah. You kind of dropped it.
If he wears a hat, you'll never notice it.
Yeah.
and now comes that part.
Well, now comes the fanfare. Here comes the fanfare. Hang on. Hang on. Oh man! Every time I hear that,
every time,
it gets me right in the feels. Right in the feels.
It's so emotional. It's so emotional.
I can hardly stand it.
Yes.
Well, Tom Klimoski, you are now a Modeler's Life superfan number 43.
Wow.
He's a marginally.
Congratulations.
Fan, right?
Yeah, you are a marginally adequate super fan.
That fits me perfectly. That is exactly me.
Yep, number 43, Richard Petty. Boom, you got that number.
Wow.
The king.
In the 7-year history, over 7.5 year history of this podcast, we've only had 43 super fans. That's how.
Wow.
There you go.
Some people are more excited about that than being a master model railroader.
I think this is probably better than a master model railroader.
Exactly.
Marginally adequate super fan.
Yeah, marginally adequate.
Yeah.
So now your job now, Tom, is to go out about the nation, about the world, and spread the word of the Modeler's Life, and and live your life in such a way that anything that you see, like if there's a minor car accident and you pull over to that happens in front of you, and you pull over to give assistance because you're a former fire captain and you know what to do in those situations. After everything is calmed down, an example of what you would do as a super fan is you'd say, now, to pass the time, have any of you folks ever heard of a Modeler's Life podcast? And then
Okay.
And then you'd explain that to him and maybe play a couple of, have him sit there for an hour and a half while you play an episode.
Okay.
But the most important thing is he has to find some prominent person to actually present the certificate to him.
Yeah.
With photographic evidence.
Yeah. And that's what we need we need you having the certificate presented to you with some sort of valid photographic evidence. And whatever you do, don't get the modeler simply known as Kelly to do it because he can't take pictures.
Oh, well, I just missed the opportunity with having Don.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would have been perfect.
Yeah, having the average.
Fly Don up and have him do it.
Yeah, having the average Don.
Well, get a hold of the guy who's a commercial pilot to fly Don up, and then you're going.
Yeah, we could get John Farrington. We could see if John can ask his boss if we could borrow his plane for an afternoon.
I'm sure he would be perfectly fine with that.
Oh yeah, I don't think that would be a problem. I'm going to be John Farrington. I'm going to be such a fanboy of yours. Okay, that's it. Bruce, can you give out our email address?
Yes, our email address. As always, we like to hear what you think, good, bad, otherwise, indifferent. We enjoy it. We take notes, and well, maybe not take that many notes. We do take notes. But anyway, our email address is modlerslife@gmail.com. That's modelers with one L like Lance, not two L's like Lionel. modlerslife@gmail.com.
Well, nice. I like that. And we also have a website called amodelerslife.com. And if you go there and just scroll down to the picture of the moderately agitated male boy in a particularly agitated state, all you got to do is click on that picture and boom, the email will be all set for you to go. All you got to do is fill in the text and the subject, and you'll be ready to go. And we love getting email. And finally, also on the website is you can click on a link for Patreon. And if this is a free, this is on Monday, and this is a free episode. But if you really like this episode and you've never listened to the Patreon channel, for just Lance, you might be interested in this. For just 365 easy payments of 16 cents a day, you too can enjoy a second podcast every week on Tuesdays. And our buddy Kaylee Zhang refers to it as the Antics Channel. So we have all sorts of stuff there. And Lance, I highly recommend that the next time you're going to buy supplies for one of your railroads, if you need to go to a commercial supplier, I would highly recommend that you go to Midwest Model Railroad. And I
think I have used them.
Okay.
They are good.
Tell them Lionel sent you.
Okay, I will do that.
And their URL is midwestmodelrr.com. And if you scroll across the navigation bar and click on AML, you'll be into a wonderland of AML merchandise, hats, hoodies, shirts, mugs, whatever you possibly need. So I know you're probably, as soon as you hang up here, you're going to be going off to do that.
You know me so well.
I know. So now, Lance, there's just one thing left for you to do, because we're going to make this an actual episode of the podcast, because it was very interesting. As always, you were interesting. How do you think this went, William?
I thought it was marginally adequate.
Yeah,
it was excellent. Lance was a great guest.
Yes, he is a great guest. You'll be on. Are you up to being on again, Lance?
Oh, of course.
All right.
I've got to pay off this headset somehow.
Yeah, exactly. And what did you think, Tom? How did we do?
I agree with William. Marginally adequate.
There you go. Perfectly. And as a matter of fact, that's quite a coincidence, because you're the guy that invented that saying.
That's true.
The slogan of the AML. Okay. At the exact moment, Lance, you have to say "Happy Rails to you." There's no singing. There's no interpretation. There's no dancing. Just merely say with enthusiasm, "Happy Rails to you."
Happy Rails to you.
Yeah, not yet.
He was practicing.
Oh, was he practicing?
Sounded good.
He was practicing.
Yeah, it sounded good.
He wanted to run through the line to make sure he had it right.
Yeah.
Okay, one more, guys, and I gotta
All
roll.
right,
So.
just hang on. This is going to take another 5 seconds. Well, Lance, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
Happy Rails to you.
and Busted Knuckle, guests of a Modeler's Life podcast, stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.